Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of RailCats Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savitich, and the Sioux City Explorers series comes to an end with the RailCats dropping the series 2-1. A bit of offense, a lack of pitching, I would say, in this series. I outside of the first game, the RailCats were very productive in runs. Hits, I mean, even in game one, they still had 7 hits, so you're looking pretty good. Game 2 is an explosion, so on and so forth. Let's just go ahead and get into the first game of the series. Sioux City wins 5-2 over the RailCats. In more of really what it was very front loaded for Sioux City. Them scoring more of all of their runs in the 4th inning, or not in the 2nd inning where they scored 3 runs. But the first and 4th, them scoring 1 run, and really surprisingly seeing Danny Alvaro go 8 innings. I really thought after the 2nd inning, or even really after the 4th inning, that he was going to be done. But really, yeah, he gave up 7 hits, 5 earned runs over 8 innings, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. This was just one of those games that it kind of led into the entire series. I mean, Sioux City is a team that kind of, I would say, maybe a little bit faltered coming out of the gate when we just kind of look at their schedule. I mean, when you have Kansas City and, you get swept by Kansas City, who is defending Miles Wolf Cup champions, like that's going to be a tough task in general, taking 2 or 3 against Lincoln, splitting a series against Chicago. So, like, their record necessarily doesn't impose of what we were going to get from the RailCats, but I think this was a good gauge to get from Sioux City. Now, the first game, you can kind of chalk it up as this was something that we're probably going to see more times than not with the RailCats, is that their offense is going to go through very, very hot streaks, and they're going to have a game or two where it's non-existent. And this was one of those games where it was just kind of non-existent to a certain extent. 1 run comes from Basabe off of a home run. Actually, it's a 2-run home run that he has, or no, it's a 1 run. My bad. But he drove into. It was a solo home run. He drove into throughout the course of the game. But like outside of that, I mean, everyone got hits besides Sierra, Contreras, and Valera. And the whole thing with Valera and Nagowatsky, that guy just seems like a real hoot. Like, he has just over, like, I think 150 games or 150 MLB at bats in the major leagues between St. Louis, Toronto, and Pittsburgh. It all started with Nagowatsky popping out to Valera at first, and Valera caught the ball. And at first I thought maybe there was some kind of, like, he was arguing that Valera was in his way, but Valera has every right to the ball, and it was behind first base. So I guess what ended up happening was Valera was jogging back to his kind of position, but he was jogging behind. I'm just gonna call him. I'm tired of saying his last name, but John, behind him, and John basically looked at Valera and was like, "Why are you running up on me like that?" Like, this guy just has that persona about him, like he thinks he's better than everyone. But let's put one thing into perspective real quick. Let's just have a humbling moment, okay? I don't care what kind of experience you have, you're still playing in the American Association. You're not in affiliated ranks. You're not in the MLB. You are all in the same level, right? Like, get over yourself. You're not. You go. No, now. Don't get me wrong. Looking at his stats from last year to this year, I mean, last year he's batting a 3.7. Last year he was batting a 3.17. This year he's batting a 2.77. Like, don't get me wrong. His numbers are impressive as far as batting average, 4 home runs, 16 RBIs from last year. I mean, right now he doesn't have any home runs, but he has 5 RBIs. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he seems like a really good batter player, but he just seems like a terrible person. And I hate terrible personalities. I really do. I just, when you think that you're better than anyone and everyone, and you're really not. You're not even the best player in the American Association. Like, you're not even thought, like, most fans don't even know who you are. The only reason I knew that was when talking around, Chuck mentioned that he played a handful of games in MLB. So I was like, all right, let me look at his baseball reference page. Like, that's no one. It's not like I don't know. It would be like, let's just say randomly for sake of argument that Derek Jeter decided he was going to get back into playing baseball and wanted to play in the American Association. Like, everyone would know who you are, right? Even, like, I don't know, like a Chris Sale. Like, everyone knows who a Chris Sale is, or A-Rod or someone like that. If you're gonna give me a guy that has a crap ton of MLB experience, a different story. I think you have that sort of right where you're like, you still want to play, but like, you're not, your body's just not at that level to play at a high level, so you just don't want to kind of play baseball. This guy, not so much. But anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track. So what ends up happening is later on, I know I had it pulled up. At the top of the fifth, DNA throw, and from my point of view, let me see if I can pull up the. So Lingwall flies out, and the first ball that is thrown to Nowaski is high, but to me it didn't really look. Now, granted, I could be wrong. To me, it didn't look like when the ball came out of DNA's hand that it was meant to go that high. The way it looked to me. Hold on, let me grab my example ball of what I saw when it looked like he threw it. Right, it didn't look like he had the control to make it go towards the Nagawaski's head. What it looked like to me, it was like he was trying to throw, I don't know if it was a changeup or whatever the case may be, but when it came out of his hand, it almost like came off like off the back pinky of his hand, and it kind of caused it to go astray. It didn't look to me like he was intentionally trying to do it. Is what I'm going with. Now, I could be completely wrong. I mean, he could be, but the way that Olivero threw the ball, and he was nonchalantly just like walking, like, he threw the ball, bad pitch, walked, kind of recouped yourself, and Nowaski was just like jawing at him, just kept jawing and jawing and jawing and jawing and jawing. It's just like, well, why are we jawing? There's no need to jaw. Like, I get it, whatever, but like, he just continued the conversation, and Dana's like, I don't know what I did wrong. Like, I'm sorry I threw the ball that high. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. And then it kind of all just kind of broke. The bench is clear. I know Valera really wanted to go after him and Ramon Ortiz was like, you could see it in the video that I posted on YouTube. Like, he was just like, no, like, get away, and you could hear Lamar like trying to break it up. Like, it was just one of those situations where you have a player who has a bad toxic personality, just trying to stir shit up. Sorry for my language, but that's kind of how it feels to me. Was like he's just there to start stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, he has the numbers that kind of back it up, but like if your sole purpose is just to get under people's skins, go play a different sport. If you want to be physical, go play a different sport, because really the two bench clearings. I'll get into the in the third game here. The only reason the bench clearings really happened in the third game was because Zeus, and they have every right to do this. I do not blame them one bit. They bunted the ball on I believe it was Josh Smith, or yeah, Josh Smith. He gave up like 5 hits, all bunts basically, and all his runs gave up because of bunts. Don't get me wrong, they have every right to. They can do, and I don't know if Josh may have said something, and you know who the first person out was Nowoski. Like, he was the first person to run to home plate and want to fight someone. I have never seen a group of men look like they wanted to fight so bad and no one swung any punches. Right? You know what I'm saying? It's one of those situations where if you're going to hit somebody, hit somebody. There is no reason. I just they're in that third last game, yesterday's game, there was no rhyme or reason for it. To clear the benches, there was no rhyme or reason for it. But you have to have that one player that wants to do it, and it's just one of those, like, it comes back to, if you're gonna do something about it. And then talking with Chuck, you know, Nowoski on like the first game basically looked at Chuck and told him to shut up, right? Dude, you've been in the major leagues. You've been through affiliate ranks. I am pretty sure someone screaming from the crowd that 24 needs to be ejected. I'm pretty sure people have said a lot worse to you for a lot worse. But now that you can, I just don't know. That personality, like, dude, ignore. It's not that hard. You do it. You ignore the little kids that just want a ball from you the entire time. You tell me you can't ignore a grown adult, right? I just, that's the part that kills me. And you know, Valera and Nowoski, both older players, veteran players that should have the maturity not to get. Now, granted, I don't know what anything has been said. I can't hear. No, like I said that, but on the portion of being leadership, like, let the kids do that, right? Let the younger players do that if they want to do that. But that doesn't show that's where it kind of falters and breaks apart on that portion of it. The second game, just okay. Still going with the first game, going with D&E. You know, he pitched 8 innings, and I really think outside of that one bad inning that he had a really good. Outside of the fourth, he didn't give up a single run. The RailCats didn't give up a single run. That's where the offense just needs to kind of come into play and be like, hey, listen, we need you to score some runs here. You need to be productive. Like I said, that when you look at the score sheet and you see 2 runs, and the 2 runs come from the top of the order, obviously Basabe hitting the solo home run and bringing in Gio Diaz on an RBI. And then you look at the rest of the lineup, and you got hit. You know, only 2 players that get hits, and that was Valera and Contreras and Sierra. My bad, 3 Sierra. But that's the kind of you need a little bit more production. I mean, even when you look at Sioux City's side, you know, Nick Schumpert had two hits, 2 runs, 1 RBI. Ortega had 2 RBIs, but like there's a lot more like zeros in the hit column with Sioux City, but there's more productive hits through Sioux City. And it's just one of those situations where, I mean, even they went through 4 pitchers versus the RailCats only went through 1. And it was probably one of those where D&A wanted to keep going, and he did perfectly fine after outside the one inning. Really, outside the one inning, he wasn't too terrible. I mean, the hits may be a big factor in his past two starts. The first start he had, he only gave up 4 hits. And the May 15th he gave up 6, but the runs were 2-1. The aspect of him going the distance is nice to see, that Lamar Rogers wants to give him that leash of going 8 innings. I think if you go 8 innings and you give up the 5 runs, that's a little bit more respectable than going like 4 innings and giving up 5 runs. And that's one of those cases where when you look at his statistics, maybe not necessarily the quote unquote best, but it looks a lot better when you extend it out a little bit. Julio Pinto came in and finished the game. He's still looking really good. I mean, he's only given up 2 runs so far, even though he played a third inning. He pitched every game in this series, at least 2 1 inning and then 1 third inning on that portion. He's looking really good on that, and that's the hard part is like there you're gonna start probably seeing some of the pitchers. We're gonna see more of certain pitchers and less of others, and that's when the change is gonna start kind of coming a little bit. I think you're gonna kind of start narrowing all that stuff down. Getting into game 2 though, the RailCats win 15-8, and that was a school day game. Most of us probably didn't get to watch it, as far as it being a day game, and me being back into my old spot. I don't necessarily get the freedom anymore to really look at my phone, because I'm always like, I'm not really on the floor. I'm like in the back of the house sort of deal more, but I'm also doing a lot more. I'm not really paying attention to my phone as much as versus when I was in the management spot. Not saying that it was easier for me to take a step back and look to see what the score is, because I'm not constantly doing something because I have other priorities. So it's just one of those, like, I look down and the RailCats are up 3-0 in the first game. I'm like, all right, cool, solid, no biggie. And then next time I look at my phone, it's 7-6 Sioux City. I'm like, oh, great, here we go. And then I look at my phone after work and it's 15-8. I'm like, okay, like, we'll take that. And I think the biggest thing to take away from that, it was Carlos Rangel hitting 3 home runs. And, just talking, I was able to talk with Brandon. He came down and he talked to me. And, at the time that, Rincon was hitting some of those home runs, was like the wind just picked up the right moment. And that's that's not to granted the amount of power that this guy has, because that's why he's been brought in, is for the power aspect of it. It's just nice to see that come to fruition. We also saw the new catcher, Mike Galino, who went 2 for 3. He scored 2 runs and 1 RBI. He seems like a productive player, and I just hope this doesn't turn into one of those situations of where we had this situation the past 2 years with the RailCats, and that's the catching position. When you have the backup catcher and he produces one game and he sits the next game, or sits a handful a couple games, and this situation is a little bit different because Quintana has been productive. He's been a very productive catcher for the RailCats this year. Now finally getting his batting average up to 220. Actually, he's up at 225 right now. Scoring 9 runs, having 6 RBIs, only having 1 home run, but a double and a triple. Like, he's being productive, and right now, as I have it written down back over this way, he is on a 8-game hitting streak. He leads the team in hitting streak right now at 8. Like, you look at his stats and like you just see a bunch of ones, but the issue is when you scroll over to the at bats portion of it, it's 4, 5 at bats, and the averages don't really add up that well on that portion. But he's starting to turn around, and I think that's something that we lacked last year was the actual production from the catching position. You had Thomas Greeley, who was a productive hitter most times, but not all the time. Seth Cadell was big power number, but wasn't producing at the level that he needed to be. I just hope this doesn't turn into one of those where, if Quintana just ends up being a DH, you have now. Granted, it's only one game, but I just don't want it to turn into where we go from Quintana or Galeno having a really good first game, and then we go to game number 3, and your DH is Jose Contreras, who goes 1 for 4. But then, it's one of those situations where, okay, Rincon goes over 3. You can't really punish him. He has one bad game. But I'm just saying, it's one of those situations that we kind of run into last year, is when someone's not being productive, who do we have to replace them? And I think this year we do, but the replacements are being almost as productive, or as what you would get from the starter necessarily. Also, I don't know how relevant it could potentially be. Don't get me wrong, I like Carlos Rincon as a batter. He has played a very good right field. His speed for the ballpark the RailCats play in isn't necessarily a good thing. I think that was just, I don't remember what it was, but his speed. There was one play if someone was a little bit faster. I think it was a ball that dropped between Gio and Rincon, and I think it was off a Lingua triple, I believe, that came in like later in the game yesterday. But it was one of those where, like, I don't know if the alignments were just off, and if Gio was playing more of playing away, and the ball just kind of dropped. It seemed like one of those that I was like, oh, that should be easily caught, and it wasn't caught, and it was kind of overran or underran or whatever the case may be. I think in this situation, I think you have a potential good outfielder in Brandon Fields that you could potentially put there, and you could put Rincon in that DH role, just maybe for pitcher-friendly ballparks. You're not saying that, I think that statistics kind of changing a little bit with the RailCats at their ballpark. Don't get me wrong, it depends on where you hit the ball. There was one I don't remember. I was like, oh, that ball's gone, and then it hits off the bottom of the wall in left field. Like, don't get me wrong, there's parts of the park that play very big, but the parts that don't play big anymore are going out. Like, obviously bringing the bullpens in help. I think there was one Sioux City Explorers home run that hit off the bottom of the fence, of the metal fencing in the bullpen. That would, a handful of years ago, that would have just probably been a triple. It wouldn't have been a home run or a double, just depending where the ball landed. Now that the past couple years, it's a home run. But going back to the game 2, looking at the starters, Sanabria comes in and he pitches 5 innings, gives up 6 hits, and the bullpen comes to shut things down. That's one of those situations where it's like the starting pitching is starting to kind of peer its head open, or try to pop its head out, as this is going to probably be a problem that has to be addressed. Going into yesterday's game as well. Actually, I have my games all. Oh, I pulled up both of those, and I didn't mean to. Chris Irwin pitching, and yesterday Chris Irwin, I just don't think his stuff was there. I don't think the command was there. And this was brought up. This was a really good brought up point that Chuck was talking to John Sheeks about, and to me was that we were robbed of a John Cheeks, Chris Irwin showdown. And it would have been really nice to have that, but we obviously know it didn't happen. But Irwin only going 3 innings, giving up 2 runs, and 3 hits, and yesterday's game was one of those games where it showed that the bullpen cannot fully take the brunt of the pitching this year. I know in the first couple weeks the starting pitchers have to work their way up, right? Everyone has to have that happen. But this was one of those situations where there was only 2 pitchers, a inning and a third that weren't where the Sioux City Explorers didn't score a run, and that was Pinto after Franklin Perez didn't have the best outing. His command wasn't there. He gave up 3 walks, 2 hits, 3 runs. And then I think Josh Smith kind of got bit by the aspect of, I don't think at that point he was really expecting them to do what they kind of did. I mean, the game was kind of close at that point. I think it was, if I'm doing quick math, the RailCats had 4 runs, and then the Sioux City Explorers had 8 runs at that point. So it was one of those situations where actually they had 6. It was, I guess it was 8-6. So it was still, I guess it was remotely close. I just don't think it was in that situation that they were expecting a lot of bunts and the bunts were just working. If it was just and I think they gave a couple errors that really didn't make any sense to me. I think Basabi got an error on one of the bunts where it was a hard play to make in general. I mean, the way he had to come in and try to throw the ball, I don't understand some of the how you want to. Don't get me wrong. I think officiating the scorebook and being the official scorer is probably one of the hardest things to do in baseball, just because it's you don't overlook it, right? In other sports, you can kind of overlook if something were to happen or if something were to call wrong or whatever the case. Like that, baseball is just one of those sports where if you call something wrong, it's close. One side's not going to like it over the other, or whatever the case may be. That point's nor here nor there on that portion of it. But the point I'm getting to is I think Josh Smith kind of got bit by maybe a lack of the defensive side being productive, because there was one where the way Josh Smith, he's a lefty, the way he bunted it, Valera was playing back, and I forget who just laid it down, and there was nothing Josh Smith could do. It was one of those, if it was a right-handed pitcher, the play would have been made because he's stepping off the mound to the left because momentum's taking that way. But with Josh Smith, being a left-handed pitcher, his momentum's taking him to the right. So the bunt was just put in a perfect place, and there was nothing you could do about it. And then eventually, and this is where this kind of leads into the benches clearing again, because Josh Smith, they're trying to bunt the ball, and he's throwing the ball a little bit higher. And it wasn't necessarily throwing it higher, like at the batters' heads, but just higher in general because you're trying to get them to pop it up. And I think he was just so tired of. I think at that point it was just frustration over anything. It's one of those situations where you're so mad at the situation or so mad at someone else that you don't want to take it necessarily out on the person that you're mad at, so you take it out on someone else. I think at that point he was just jawing because he was just so frustrated at the lack of defensive knowledge, or lack of defense, not a lack of defensive effort, but more of a lack of defenseman adjustment on the bunt. Because I mean, there was batters that you weren't gonna expect to bunt, and they were bunting. So it was just one of those situations where the game got out of hand because Sioux City was playing smartly and playing really good baseball. Like this win, yeah, when you look at the score 12-9, there was the home runs, there was the hits, but really Sioux City at the end of the game played a really good game. I really think they locked it down defensively. They keyed off of some of the errors that happened. I know Marcos Gonzalez tried to turn a double play that didn't really turn out. He muffled the ball, and like that led to runs, and that portion sucks as well when that kind of just all kind of tumbles together. And you can look at this game and kind of chalk it up like it is what it is. Like the thing is I said at the beginning of the year, this is the first and only time that you play Sioux City all year, which the schedule makers screwed all of that up. Like I don't know what they did, what the schedule makers did, but when John Cheeks was talking to Chuck about it, and I was sitting there over because I was really waiting because I needed my baseball cards signed by them because that was the last that we weren't going to see him again. So I wanted to get the baseball cards last year signed from both Lingual and John Cheeks, and credit to both of those players. John was really really nice. I never really get the chance to I never got the chance to really talk to him. Lingual was nice. After his warm ups, he came over and signed, so on and so forth. Like really good people. Obviously know why they were fan favorites at that portion of them being there, and I know that them leaving took a toll on some of the fans just because they were so well liked on that portion of it. But that's not nor here nor there on that backside of that on those situations. But the thing is, I lost my train of thought where I was going with that, didn't I? Well, don't you love when that happens? Well, I know where I'm going with Sioux City. I said at the beginning of the year, out of division rival or out of division teams, you lose 2 out of 3. Yeah, it's at home. It sucks, but you take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. Now, when we get into playing in division teams, that's when you need to win those series. Yeah, you didn't win the series. You got swept by Chicago. Yeah, you didn't win the series against Milwaukee. I think that's a little bit different story. You win the series against the Dock Hounds. Realistically, where the competition's going to come in this year for the RailCats is going to be between Lake Country, Milwaukee. Like those two teams, that's where you're battling. Those are the two teams that you need to be battling. Because when we look at the standings right now, currently, the RailCats are again last. Now the worst team in the American Association because Lincoln won. But it's one of those situations where the Milkmen and King County are tied for third. Lake Country is 5-7. Like the RailCats would have won, they would have been 5-7 against Lake Country, and they would have been fourth. A win here or there, different story on that aspect of it. King County's coming up. Like that's who we got. We got King County is the next team that the RailCats will be playing. Looking at King County, looking at their schedule here, they take 2 or 3 against Milwaukee. They take 2 or 3 against Sioux Falls. And then they lose 2 or 3 against Milwaukee at King County. And then they lost 2 or 3 against Kansas City in Kansas City. Now, this is a 4-game series against King County here. And, when you're looking at their batting averages look really nice. I mean, Lott right now has a 392 batting average. Davis has a 364. Ward has a 355. Finol has 353. Allen 306. Craig 306. Like those hitters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hitters that are all over 300. Their home runs, they're not super high up there. But that's just one of those situations where you got really good batting averages. Pitching looks halfway decent necessarily. But like I said, I don't know. They have a people that got signed are, well, one per Alex Trope, he got signed by the Chicago Cubs. So like that's one less person you have to worry about. Like King County seems like how they've always kind of been, like kind of hidden in the weeds, nothing like crazy spectacular, but they're going to be a good team, right? And that's what you're going to see. This is going to be a good series. Obviously, being away, you kind of want to split it, but we really need to take this series. You need to win 3 games, to make it. You win the nice 3 games. You're going to be 7-9. If you sweep the series, you go 8-8. So you go back to 500. But like this is the series that you need to take. Like this definitely need to take this, because then we're getting into the Sioux Falls and the Kansas City, like that the schedule after King County gets really tough, because you have Sioux Falls, Kansas City, and then you go down to Cleburne for 6 games. Like this June is going to be a very hot start for the RailCats, and it's going to be difficult, and really it doesn't necessarily get really any easier necessarily until you see Lincoln, which is June 14th. Like this is a huge stretch for the RailCats coming up. Like this series against King County could really make or break where they lead into, because if they can break 500, the blow is going to be a little less. The pressure is going to be a little bit less than when you're facing Sioux Falls and Kansas City at home. And then granted, the Sioux Falls one is a doubleheader at home for Memorial Day, which I'm hoping to go to both of those, since they're 7-inning games and I work, but I'll work in the morning and I'll get off at 2, so I should be able to go to the game. But that's beside the point here and there. Kind of looking too far in the schedule on that portion of it. But, let's going through here real quick with the stats leaders. Galeno is leading the team in average. He only has 1 game, but Marcus Gonzalez at 295. God is a 294. Rincon 273. LG Castillo's 260. Quintana 250. Basabi 234. Bockley 231. Valera 225. Sierra 155. Contreras is at a .077. Like I think this is the point. Now obviously I know we're still waiting for 2 players we're waiting for a handful of players to come back, but like you can't wait too long. Something's gonna have to give a little bit here. Like Sierra, like he has been good. He has been productive to a certain extent when need be. Like I know, like yesterday he had the home run, but right now he has 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and batting in 158, scoring 4 runs and has 6 hits. Like you're gonna need to be like when you played with Sioux City in 2022, where you're batting the 317, or last year the 9 games of the RailCats when you batted a 281. Like we need to see that production from that shortstop position. And I'm not saying that he can't do it, because he can. He's shown that he can. He's shown that he has and will, but we just need to see it, and we haven't yet. So that's, pitching wise, Irwin, finally giving up 2 runs, but he still leads with the ERA at 150. Valdez finally gives up his 2 runs, but his ERA skyrockets a little bit because he only pitched 6 and 2 innings. But seeing a high productive run total against with Snabria, Peyton Long, Perez, Olivero, Tiedemann, like those numbers need to kind of come down and stay. Like starting pitching, here it is what it is. That to a certain extent, but those numbers need to come down on that portion of it. And then so that's gonna kind of wrap up like the statistics talking about it, because you only can talk about 3 games so long, and I'm not going to get into depth with everything, just kind of highlighting what I've seen. And then one more thing, Basabi's still playing a really good third base. By the way, there was a line shot that he jumped up and snagged and robbed a great hit that would have probably really changed the course of the first game. But he's been really good. I mean, I also Rincon's has been halfway decent in right field. He's made a couple tough plays out there, but I just think the lack of speed is the biggest issue on his end. But other than that, nothing like really jumps out at me like either way on that portion of it. So, but you know, I know probably a lot of us have been asking or wondering what productive like off the field situations the stadium renovations to a certain extent. So Brandon, if everyone Brandon, really long time lifetime RailCats fan, that man knows anything and everything about the RailCats, right? And he's right now interning with the RailCats, still in high school, but he's just kind of doing like he classified himself as a team mom yesterday when he was talking to me. But we had a good like inning and a half conversation, just kind of talking about his life, blah blah. Anyways, what I'm getting to is one, he doesn't know why by the Corson corner there, the gate, why you can't walk over that bridge, why that's taken out. But he did tell me that they have been redoing the suites, and if you haven't been up in the suites, if you take a look at the ballpark, when you look at home plate, to the left you have, it says RailCats, the logo there, and to the left I was wondering what it was. I didn't know if it was like video production because I seen TVs up there and it was a more open space, and I was wondering what that was, because originally it was for media members. The whole back area was kind of for media members because you had the benches or the seats that sat up, and I know with video production you'd need more room for that kind of stuff. So I thought maybe they rehauled that, but he told me they actually converted that area into a bar, which is really interesting. The couple questions that I may want to ask is, wouldn't that would be a really good, I don't, like I said, I haven't been up there, I don't really know exactly. Maybe that's something that I'll ask Anthony next time I see him, because I actually talked to him for the first time with that portion of it. But anyways, he was saying down the right field side that the party deck area, starting with the party deck area, I think they have the Coors Light one there on the first base side. I think the other one's the Miller. But anyways, they added a rolling garage door to that portion of it. So I think they made that one big party deck area into a big suite deck area kind of deal. And then they knocked down a couple walls to make the suites bigger. Which is something I think that's a really good idea. Not saying, I think that having a bigger suite attracts more people, because granted, last year, thanks again, Paulie, for inviting me up to the suites. But the issue is, even if you have 10 or 15 people in the suites, even though it says it fits 20, it doesn't fit them very comfortably. So having that extended will alleviate, I think that alleviates some of the pressure on the right field side. And I think the left field side's a little bit different, because I know you have like a precision cartridge that has like an entire suite to themselves, that kind of stuff. Like, you probably got more of that aspect of it. But those are little things that we may not see or may not know about, that may not be talked about. But those kinds of things are coming into place, and that's interesting. That's appealing. That's a good idea. Having a bar. And now going to the bar situation real quick, because they added that bar. I wonder if, or you could buy special tickets, or I think it would be a cool idea having some sort of like, yeah, you don't have a suite, but you can still go up to the suites, but you have to go to the bar. So I know that could lead into other situations of like, if someone's getting caught in a suite, or I know that leads into a lot, but I really think that's a cool vantage point to watch a game from, necessarily up there in a bar style, and not just limited to people that bought suite seats, because bought suite seats, you probably want to sit in the suites. But if you just want to go up and have like a bar area strictly for 21, people in 21 years old or whatever the case may be, have it almost like a little sports bar kind of deal, where you're serving different drinks, you have different games on maybe, or whatever the case. I think that would just still be cool to kind of see that aspect, because some people want to go to the game, but they really just they don't want to sit in the seat. They kind of want to like sit in a bar atmosphere and drink and that kind of stuff. So I think that's interesting. That's a cool little tidbit that I got on that portion of it. But yeah, I think there's still more to come on that. So yeah, I think that's gonna do everything for me. Real quick, everyone that's on a hitting streak right now, Gio Diaz on a 3-game hitting streak, Basabi on a 7-game, Quintana on an 8, Castillo on a 4, Contreras on a 3-game hitting streak. And I don't think there's really anyone on a 2-game hitting streak, so there's that for that. So yeah, be looking out for that. Big series against Kane County. Hopefully we can split it or win it. Prefer to win it, but if you split it, it's not that big of a deal. Life goes on. So yeah, that should do it for me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening when you're watching this, and go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike 3. Wrap this one up in green and white.